No, it has
Not
not frozen.
frozen. Very
Yay!
good. Yay.
I don't know what you did, what magic you worked, but
We got the technology working. Very good. My name is Chris Slay, and I'm playing the evaluator this afternoon. And this is Barb Pursoon, and she is a career educator here at Pleasantville High School, and she's a mathematics teacher. And so, Barb, thank you very much for helping out tonight.
no trouble,
I really
Chris.
appreciate it. The purpose of really truthfully the conference is to help us to be able to reflect on the observation and come up with a couple, points that we can actually apply to the teaching standards here in Iowa.
I appreciate that.
Yep. And one of the things that we discussed in our pre-conference had to deal with higher order thinking skills, and we agreed upon that. And the thing that I noticed as we went through the evaluation is that I collected 18 questions, of which 10 fell into the tiers of Bloom's higher order of thinking skills, which is an outstanding job.
Not bad,
Yeah.
not bad. Well, it helps that it's an upper level class.
Yes, that's truly it. I mean,
I
that's
have higher expectations for them than I would for a lower level.
right, exactly. Just some reflective questions. Tell me how you felt the lesson went.
It was not the best lesson in the world. The kids were just not connected as well as they usually are. Small class, and I don't know what it was, but I felt like I was wading through molasses to get to them. But, you have bad days like that every once in a while.
Sure
And then the thing was I had taught the same lesson to a different class the day before, and it went beautifully. Too bad you weren't there for that one.
Right.
It was just gorgeous. But it's just one of those things. I really felt like I was pulling teeth to get them to answer.
Sure. I think, what we talked about in the pre-conference, you said they're kind of a little bit lethargic because it was a first period class. And plus
It's
I was
true.
in there, and anytime you bring an observer in, it changes them a little bit. They're not sure why I'm really there.
I think it was more the first hour class
More
thing.
of a first hour class, right. What one thing that you did made you feel most effective in the lesson?
Well, again, pulling teeth, but I extended my wait time. And I really extended my wait time. Like, no, I'm not going to give you the answer. And so they finally started thinking, okay, she's not going to give us the answer. And they did come up with some good answers that I was looking for. So I felt that I felt kind of stupid just standing there saying,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
how about this? And then just waiting.
Just waiting.
And they got a little uncomfortable finally.
Sure.
I didn't think they could do that still, but they
Yeah,
did.
They definitely can, and I saw that you waited, and eventually they did respond
Mhm.
to you. Probably not as loud or as
Or as excited.
Excited.
Sometimes we get excited in class,
Excited
and
about
the excitement was not there that day.
understand. What was exciting, surprising, or frustrating again about the lesson? I know
You already know the frustrating
I know the
part,
frustrating
yeah.
part.
I always love when I teach this with the vectors, how they start seeing, oh my gosh, yeah, I can do the trig. It's slow, it's steady, I can do it. But when we do the vectors, how much easier it goes and how it actually applies to what they're doing. So this is one of I love teaching this lesson anyway, because we make the transition from actually just drawing it geometrically and then analyzing it algebraically and saying, ooh, this is a whole lot easier and it's a whole lot more precise. And that to me is one of the things I feel really excited about, is when they start seeing the x components and y components versus just I'm just drawing this at 65 degrees, that's for 8 kilometers.
Sure.
So
Sure.
that when they start seeing how you can break it apart and how we can use it that way, that to me is an exciting part.
And I definitely saw that. It's like taking it and applying it to some situation that they could relate to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plotting the distances between two cities.
Go applications.
Good applications, that's for sure. What things would you do to increase student involvement in the lesson?
Well, this is not the first time I've taught the lesson. And I do have them working on whiteboards, and they're measuring things, and they do work together. I've thought about, I have in the past tried having them come up to the board, because some kids do better at the big board. And that's one reason why I keep my whiteboards big, because some people need that bigness to write on.
Right.
But I suppose, I'm trying to think, maybe I could not ask such leading questions. Maybe I could just say, here, do it, and see what happens. Let them get over their frustration and make it more their own rather than me kind of leading them down the path sort of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that. But again, your excitement about the subject matter. Actually, pretty
Well,
much.
what can I say? I love it.
I know you do. That's why you're that great math teacher. Right? Okay. Here's another one. What are some examples of techniques or strategies that worked or could work for you in this lesson?
Well, like I said, I like using the whiteboards, and they divvy themselves into their own teams. I don't say you two work together or anything. They kind of decide who's going to be working in what team. It's nice to see the different ways they break it down and everything. So that's a technique I've really started using a lot more these past couple of years, is using the whiteboards. It's not quite as permanent. We do sometimes do it on paper and pencil too. It's easier when you have a larger number sometimes, and also if you're afraid things are going to get smeared or whatever. But
Sure.
I like using the whiteboards. I think so. I like doing stuff. I just don't like saying, okay, here's how we do it geometrically, here's how we do it algebraically. I like to make that little lead-in thing. And so I think that's an effective thing where we have sort of a project or an activity that leads into it. And again, I use my physics a lot when we're doing this. So
That's
again,
okay.
this is why I love the vectors, because
That's right.
it's math, it's physics. How can you get any better?
Yeah, cannot get any better than that. Are there any artifacts that I should examine from this lesson?
Well, again, I do have the worksheet I gave you when you first
Sure,
came,
I have
and
that.
it just gives the directions pretty much. And each one of the students had one. So I have tried in the past. I've noticed that if I do it on the worksheet like they want to, it gets kind of cramped and it's hard for them to make good measurements, which is another reason why I move either to large paper or large whiteboards, because they can make more accurate measurements then.
Yeah, than having to cram it all within one little area.
Yeah, matter of fact, this is a physics worksheet, as a matter of fact. So
So definitely you can, tie the different curriculum into one another.
I try.
I know you
How
do.
else can you get them into physics? That sounds kind of hard.
I know. They get kind of scared with that word, don't they?
Yeah.
What things would you do the same with this lesson?
Pretty much. I like the lines of questioning, and I like the application. Like I said, I've done this a couple different times, and I like this activity. I've done it enough that I've kind of got it smoothed down. Again, you know how it is. You get a lesson that you've taught a couple different times, and you smooth the rough spots, and you say, "I'm never doing that again."
Right.
And you make the adjustments. And I've kind of gotten to that part right now with this lesson, is that I've done it enough times. It's new for them every time, and but I've done enough times that I know where the rough spots are, and I know what questions to ask, when to hold back on the questions, and let them ask the questions.
That experience of prior teaching, you come in, you know exactly what's going to cause them the problems.
Yep, and I know what kind of questions they're going to ask too, and so I know what kind of questions not to ask, or what kind of statements not to make, because I want them to ask the questions sometimes. Why? And then you can come back with it. Well, why?
Yeah, why?
I love the why.
I know the why. The emphasis on the why. What things would you, again, as we've already talked about, do differently with the lesson?
Some things you just can't change. It was, again, I think it was an early morning thing. I think if I would have had 7 cups of coffee in there waiting for them, maybe the lesson would have gone a little bit better. But that could have been it that day. I don't know. I'm going to try that again. What was the question? I kind of get off sometimes.
Okay, basically, what things would you do differently?
No, what would I do differently? Maybe I'd mix them up a little bit. You get too comfortable working with Josh. Maybe you should come over here and work with Caitlin.
Yes.
That might be a little bit way to wake them up and make them change around a little bit. If that situation happens again. Maybe I could have them write down and write a step-by-step thing. This is what we do first, and why is this working? Sort of a 5-minute journal that the team would write.
Sure.
That would pull in those writing things that we're supposed to be pulling into our lessons much more.
Right.
So
Those
that,
literacy standards.
oh, the literacy standards, oh, yes, yes.
Everybody's favorite.
Mm.
What are ways that you assessed your students during the lesson?
Well, number one, I checked to see what they were doing, walked around, checked to see what they were doing. The best way I think to assess is either by what's said and what's not said. Sometimes you expect a question, and if it doesn't ask, you wonder why. And so you go around and see. It's usually because they don't know enough to ask the question.
Right.
So if they aren't asking a certain question, like, bringing up, well, why do we know that this works, or why can we use SOHCAHTOA, or whatever it is, I know that they haven't really gotten to that level of understanding yet to ask that question. So then we have to kind of go back a little bit and say, okay, so when we're doing this, let's look at the picture and say, what can we know about this? What don't we know about this? And
Sure.
we can go from there.
Mhm.
So that, I hope that answers what you want. I don't know. But that's
does.
mostly the assessment. And then later on, of course, when we do other problems,
Sure.
I will know if they've understood the transition between the geometric to the algebraic. And because sometimes you get them, they still want to draw it in. And I don't mind that. I draw pictures all the time. I'm very visual.
Right.
But I want to see, why does this work? And you don't have to put it in columns like I put them in columns. Maybe you just want to put them, side by side or something.
Right.
But assessing what they do later on when we do problems that require the X and Y components, that I think I can tell better than, but mostly during the lesson, it's checking, seeing what they're doing, and checking what they ask and what they don't ask.
Sure. And that's a really fine strategy. You just have to constantly go around the room and
You work the room.
work the room. That's it. Can't work the room from your desk.
No, you can't. You're right.
What do these results mean to you in future planning? In other words, basically with the assessment. How does that help you with future planning?
Well, I know whether I have to go back and reteach, obviously. If something's not working, if they aren't asking questions, or they're kind of giving me the deer in the headlights look when I'm talking about, this one's the X is the magnitude times the cosine of the angle, and they're kind of giving me deer in the headlights looks. We know we have to go back and say, okay, let's go back a couple of weeks when we were talking about what did we do and when we had this situation. So it's a good thing for rechecking, and then it also helps me in deciding maybe I don't have to go do this problem set right here for an example. Maybe we'll take a step up because they caught on to it like that. So I'm not going to waste their time or my time on this. I'm going to take a step further and say, we don't have to fuss with that. And so it gives me an idea of which route to take, which path to take. Do we need to step back a little bit? Can we jump ahead? Or are we right on schedule where I thought you were going to be?
And of course, as we both know, there's nothing wrong with going back and picking up, prior learning.
If you don't do that, you're a fool.
Yeah.
Because, another example, whenever I teach basic SOHCAHTOA trig, right triangle trig in geometry, I spend a week before going over square roots. How do we simplify square roots? How do we multiply square roots? How do we add square roots? Because if I don't, I know from past experience that about halfway through my trig lesson, I'm going to have to stop and say, you guys don't remember anything about square roots. We're going to have to go back and review them. So, yeah, it's a good thing to do. I have no trouble whatsoever. You don't understand this? That's fine. I like to give a quiz every couple of days. I don't always, in this upper level classes, we tried an experiment this year. We don't hand in homework. We do homework together. They've got the whiteboards, they've got paper, they're working in teams. They do it, they come up and check their answers. I'm going around answering questions, that sort of stuff. But we don't hand it in. But every 2-3 days, we have a little quiz about what we're doing.
Sure.
And I really, really like that. Number one, it reduces my stacks of homework to grade. But it's also, you don't have the Mickey Mouse stuff. Oh, yeah, I'm going to copy somebody's homework and just hand it in, and she's going to think that I know it. You truly know if they know it or not when you give them the quiz. And they accept it because, hey, I don't have to hand in the homework. We're doing it together in class.
That's right.
So I really like using that, and I'd like to extend it to some other classes. I just tried it in the trig class this year, and upper level classes I think can handle it. I moved it into physics too. We did a lot of that in physics, but not so sure about the lower level classes.
Yeah.
They might not have the self-discipline or whatever,
Sure.
or the desire to learn.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of like something that needs to be taught a lot sooner, you know. It's,
it does.
It
You
does.
can't just expect kids. It's like I hesitate to bring this up.
It's okay.
Inquiry.
Yeah.
You cannot expect kids to learn using the inquiry method just like that.
Right.
When I was at Colfax, the physics teacher taught inquiry, and he told me, and he had taken classes and classes and classes.
Right.
He said it takes 4 years of learning how to do things inquiry before you are really good at it, before the students pick up on what they're supposed to be doing and how they're doing it. And he said everything before that is kind of inquiry, kind of not, because they have to learn how to learn that way.
Right.
You
They're
just-
just not used to that, are they?
No, they are not.
Yes, I understand. Exactly. What has this lesson triggered for your own goals of professional development? What do you see there?
Well, I like having the kids work on projects like this, even though they're just itty bitty in-class projects things. I like working the applications. I think that's a better way for learning, I really do. And it's something that I want to incorporate into my teaching more. It's just so darn hard to find them. So when you get them, you use them every year.
That's right.
But yeah, I really like to try and incorporate that a little bit more, so it's more active, they're more doing things, it's not just sitting down and, Chris, you know how math can be. Okay, sit down, I want you to do problems 1 through 24
Right.
on page 326. Be careful on number 19, you might have to look at example 2. You know, it means nothing to them.
Sure.
And I really like working it that way.
Right.
So that's something that I'm going to be planning to do more. I like using the whiteboards. I like using the small groups. Like I said, I'm going to try and extend the homework thing to all my upper level classes.
Sure.
It's more of a standard-based grading idea too, which I'd like to lean towards.
Right.
And if we weren't going into block next year, and I have to do all the planning for that instead, because I was establishing all my standard-based grading things for next year, and then they dropped block on us. I said, well, I can't do both. I'm
Right.
sorry, but not with new textbooks, not with.
Right. Exactly.
So.
Maybe with a new superintendent coming in. So
Oh yeah.
hopefully we can perhaps
Hopefully.
encourage him to go towards standard based.
Well, it works well for math and it works well in science.
Yes.
I don't know, I can't say for the other areas, but I do know I have talked to math and science teachers who do it. They do like it. But that would be something I'd like to do for future planning too, is lean that way a little bit more. I
Okay.
think it's more authentic learning more than let's play the game. And a lot of kids in this school play the game. And
Oh,
what
yes.
happens is I have a junior in the other trig class, not the one you observed, who can't add fractions.
Mhm.
And I had another one who, oh my gosh, hun, you multiply two negative numbers together, you get a positive, please. You know, and these are in upper level class, but they have played the game so long
Right.
that they don't have the basics that they need, and we need to get them out of that game mode and into the thinking mode, learning mode, because it's got a good focus and I've got a good future if I can do this.
Sure. I
So,
understand. Definitely. So the professional development you can see is trying to integrate more of
maybe
the
project-based learning stuff,
right.
that would be something. I know when I was talking to Shannon Harkin, our AEA lady who does professional development, she said, Barb, you're on the cutting edge with those whiteboards. And I'm saying, yeah, I know. It's something that's really great. I like it. I try to spread the news. But,
Right.
yeah, I like the more activity. I like the breaking it apart, which we're going to have to do for block anyway.
Sure.
So I still don't see when she says we just isn't teaching 2 lessons, hun. Have you seen my Common Core? Have you seen your Common Core?
This is my Common Core, yes.
No, I'm not going to be teaching 2 lessons a day. I'm going to be teaching 3, by gosh.
We're going to be pushing as it is. You know,
Yes.
trying to get everybody
But
there.
that is something that I'm going to try in my future, is to try and work in some more things especially for those linking ideas, for the going from the very basic, the very middle school sort of concept of, okay, I'm drawing something that's 45 degrees, that's 8 centimeters long, sort of stuff. To saying, okay, so this is going to be the, you know, the cosine of this times
Right.
the magnitude, and I want him getting towards that. So I think those transition activities are really going to be important in block scheduling.
Okay.
So
Well, great. That's a very nice reflection upon the lesson. I just want to give you a couple other things that I saw.
oh,
in the
please
lesson.
do.
And kind of link them a little bit to the Iowa teaching standards, for instance. Understands and uses instructional strategies that are appropriate to the content area. And again, it goes back, in my opinion, to modeling. I mean, you did an outstanding job in the lesson. You know, you took the kids step by step through it, and then you also would wait for their responses, and you know, give it effective wait time
Thank you.
as well. But it was excellent modeling. And then, of course, the next part of the strategy was, okay, now we're going to try a problem on your own.
Right.
You know, and still yet, you can give that modeling example back to them. The other thing I saw is that one has to do with it has to do with standard one, where basically, again, it's an instructional strategy. You know, I saw, the things that we've been pushing in professional development, such as, we do it, I do it, they do it alone,
Yes.
that type of philosophy. I saw that being heavily used during the lesson. I also saw, like, from Standard 4, connects students' prior knowledge, life experience, and interest. I saw a lot of informal assessment of both prior knowledge and current instructional objectives.
Oh.
So I did actually see that, and very, very impressive.
Thank you.
You know.
It helps to have been teaching for 20 years.
Yes, it does. Doesn't it? You're not that little greenhorn that's coming in here. Also, you use research-based instructional strategies that address the full range of cognitive levels. And again, I saw great use of higher order thinking skills, thinking questions. You never just took the student's answer, but asked why and how they got the answer. You just didn't say, okay, here's the answer. You asked them all the time, why, how did you get that answer?
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. That's something I try to do.
Yeah.
Because that's the important thing. I always tell kids, the right answer is really meaningless. Because how many times have I had someone come up to me and say, what's 25 times 135? I said, It never happens. But I need to know how I can do it and how I can replicate it for the situation. And so that's what's important, is the how and the why.
The why.
Why did you do it?
not just that answer, but
Yeah.
how did you actually obtain that answer? One of the other things that I saw is that you establish and implement professional development plans. The district professional development goals are being met by simply posting the objectives on the board, telling them what they're going to learn at the beginning of the lesson, and that is definitely an artifact that can be used to meet that standard.
And I have to admit, that's something difficult for me to do.
Yeah.
I'm not used to doing that. I don't always like to announce what we're going to be learning sometimes.
Sure.
But it's what they want us to do, so I'm trying hard to do that.
Right. And I really appreciate that. And I know it's difficult even in my own class. That sometimes I go in there and how it is, you get bouncing around.
Well, and you want to get started because, hey, and you also want to get started with the lesson, because the quicker you catch them, the less time they're going to be off doing, off.
They definitely, but it's definitely important, I guess, that they do know precisely what they're going to learn. I also saw that you create a learning community that encourages positive social interaction, active engagement, self-regulation for every student. The classroom environment was, of course, very positive, and when the students were treated very respectfully, even if they answered incorrectly, you were very, very polite with them, and you would lead them to the correct answer. You would model that correct answer.
Well, otherwise they're not going to answer you when you.
No, they're not.
And they're not going to say if they don't understand it, they're not going to ask.
Yes, exactly. If they're belittled, so to speak, they're just going to clam up. But that definitely.
Seen
was
it
not-
happen, had it happen to me, don't want to do it again.
Oh, sure. I understand that. Can you give me a summary of what we talked about today, the strengths and improvements that you might want to see?
Well, sounds like one of my strengths are the fact that the classroom is a welcoming place, is a place where they expect learning to be done. It's not a place that you mess around or you text on your phone or whatever. We're here for a reason. Sounds like you like the fact that we were doing a project and that they were working together, and that you really like the idea that I was using higher order thinking skills. The questions I was asking you really liked. Thank you, by the way, I work hard on those.
That's right.
Things that I have to work on is, again, sometimes I know I just can't catch them. It just seemed like it was dead weight. But so that's something I have to try and see. So when they're coming in the door, maybe I can short circuit that somehow. So hey, you know, how you doing? Why don't you go get a drink of water or something? Or I know that's worked sometimes, or get them talking about what they did on the weekend, but not too much, because otherwise that's all they want to do.
That's all they want to talk about.
Right. I do have to make sure, and I appreciate that I did it when you were here, but that is something I do have to work on, is making sure that I have my purpose mentioned and the statement of what we're doing today. That is something that I do have to work on. And I want to work on, keep on with those higher order things. Like I said, that's a stressful thing to do. I can do it easily because I've done this before.
Right.
If I was doing a new project, that's something I'd really have to watch to make sure I do.
Sure.
The I show, we do, you do sort of stuff. That goes well with math and science.
Right.
So that's easy to work in. But I know I do have to work on if I have new projects, which I do want to have. Making sure I get the higher order thinking skills and not just make it too easy. Because if it's too easy, you lose the smart ones. And if you make it too hard, you lose the ones that struggle.
Sure.
So you gotta strike the right spot.
In the right spot to be able to bring them all in together. Okay, Barbara, what I'd like to do is thank you very much for your reflections upon the lesson.
Well, I tell you, I appreciate you coming in and giving me feedback, really.
Sure.
Because, you know, you think you're doing things that are good, but sometimes you don't even notice what you're doing, or positive or negative. So,
And I think as we've talked before, we know that they're going to be implementing the peer,
mhm.
observations, that we might as well just kind of get used to having each other drop in. And make
Not
it
that I
click.
mind.
Yeah, I understand that. But sometimes I think that teachers overall were very, very territorial, and we're used to working
We are.
very much alone. We're used to working alone, and when somebody that's an equal to us walks in the door, we sometimes get defensive.
Well, because you're afraid you're going to be judged.
Yeah, we just-
And I know when I was at Postville, I was a floater. I didn't have a room. And one of the English teachers would sit in there during my entire time that I would teach.
Sure.
And I just felt like she was judging me the entire time.
Right.
And I'm thinking, you could work in the teacher's lounge, you could work all sorts, but she just sat there in the back at her desk and just watched everything I did have to do. I felt really uncomfortable with it because I did not feel like it was she was watching for good reasons. I felt like she was trying to find fault.
Right.
So that's something I always like to keep in mind if I ever, when we do
When
peer
we do.
observations.
And exactly how we do that.
Because everybody teaches differently.
That's right.
It's an art, not a science. There's science to it, but I disagree with Shannon Harkin on that. She says it's science, we have all these things to do. Teaching is an art.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. You can take, the researched ideas, but still yet you have to intermix it with your own personality and your own,
This
level
is
of
true.
skills. You have to.
Exactly.
You have to. Otherwise, it becomes too robotic, and then I think people get burned out.
They do. And I know my sister teaches first grade in California, and she says there are certain times when she has a script she has to read from, and to me that would just be, oh my goodness. You start giving me a script, that's when I start looking elsewhere.
Well, I just want to let you know what will happen next is that we'll have a meeting that will help us develop an individual professional development goal.
Okay.
And because basically with an evaluation cycle, what's supposed to happen is that the teacher, the administrator, are supposed to get together and help come up with that professional development goal.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes it's usually dictated by the building, and then everybody sort of receives it, but in
Right.
truth and in all honesty, it's
Uh-huh.
supposed to be an individualized goal for you.
Well, I'm thinking what I probably need to do is start researching and find a few more activities or projects or something to get students involved into the mathematics and into the science, because they've had dry, boring math, and that's what's driven them away, and I want to make it alive for them.
Yeah.
So that's something I think I really need to work on, is getting some more activities in.
Okay, and perhaps, you know, the things, you know, we've talked about, you know, so far, we can develop those into an individual professional development goal.
I'd like that.
Keep it pretty simple, but yet enough to be able to challenge you to, you know, stretch a little bit further.
I appreciate that. I would like
And
that.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a copy of the evaluation. I scripted it all out, and
Thank
and
you.
then I'll have you sign it just so that we would
Both agree?
well, actually that we met.
Okay,
It's mostly that.
okay.
Okay, and that's pretty much it. We'll see you in a couple days.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate this.
Sure, and I appreciate you letting me come into your classroom.
No trouble.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Ooh.
31 minutes. How long